Okay. And we have 0 attendee. Oh, there we go. Here's our attendees are coming.
I'm getting an error message from VM about some weird software thing. How to get my mic.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. We see people jumping on the webinar. Take a few minutes just to let everybody get into the room before we start. And shouldn't be long. Awesome to have you all join us today to hear about our work with the Community Housing Initiative. I'll make introductions as soon as we have everybody here in the room with us. And then we'll jump onto a slide presentation. And then after the slides are done, we will we'll take any questions that we haven't answered during the presentation. Our room is filling up. This is great. So happy so many of you are here with us today to learn about the work we're doing here in Bonner County with community housing. I'm waiting for one of our panelists who's just having some Zoom issues to jump on with us. Okay. He is working on it. So we're going to get started and hopefully Mike will be able to join us here shortly. Okay, everyone. Okay. Hello to everybody out there in Zoom land. I am Katie Cox. I'm the Executive Director of Kaniksu Land Trust here based in Sandpoint, Idaho. The work we do is in Bonner County, Boundary County, and we also work in Sanders County, Montana. But today we're talking about our Community Land Trust Initiative, which focuses and centers right now in Bonner County. I have had the pleasure of working on this initiative with a host of individuals, one of which is here on the call as a panelist today, Ben McGran. Ben is with Actus Projects and has been along on this ride of discovery and learning with me for probably the last 2 years. And Ben has been helping as project manager on this work as well. We also have on our advisory team, Stephanie Reif, and Stephanie's with Selkirk Association of Realtors here in Sandpoint. Travis Icardo with Mountain West Bank. As you'll see as we go talk through this, a big component of this is that important mortgage for those individuals, those families who are working on achieving home ownership. So it's great to have Travis on the committee with us, as well as all of the other banks in this area working to help us make this type of project a reality for our community. Morgan Hepler. Morgan is a lawyer in Sandpoint. He's also a member of the Kaniksu Land Trust Board. We have Chris Hecht, who is a community advocate and has been passionate about community land trust for decades. And then joining us, hopefully here shortly, Michael Brown, who has been with us along the way on this project. It's a funny story how I met Michael. I was starting to do the work and the background and the research on community land trust housing. And I happened to find my way to a website for the first organization that really started in this sphere, which was Burlington Associates. And this is back in Vermont, where really community land trust here in the United States, at least, it's all over internationally, but it's where the crux of it started here in the United States. And I noticed one of their individuals lived in Bozeman, Montana. So I thought, well, there's somebody in the West who might be able to help me. And I cold called Michael, and ever since that first initial conversation, have been truly delighted in having him help guide this work and really giving us an understanding of how a community can make this work possible. So I'm grateful for each of the members of this committee and the time commitment that they've put in helping to facilitate these projects. So probably the first question a lot of people have, and I know it's been living out there in social media land, is why is a land trust thinking about housing? And really, there's many reasons why Kaniksu Land Trust entered into this work. At the core of the work that we do as a land trust really is what you probably know most land trusts for, and it's that working with private property owners to make sure that their desires for the future of their property are held intact. And in many cases, especially with, as we know, we live in an area of rich habitat, rich land, and how do we make sure that as we go into the future, that we make sure to protect some of those values, conservation values that are truly important to each of us at our core, as well as the benefits they provide for our community. So, when we focus on conservation properties, we focus on looking at working lands, keeping working lands in working hands, we say. So agricultural properties, forested properties, we look to protect wildlife, those important wildlife corridors, land that's connected with water, land of cultural significance. We have a great relationship with our local tribes, the Kalispel and the Kootenai tribe. So we work on creating opportunities for protecting that land that's culturally significant to the tribes, as well land that as we experience changes in our climate, that land of climate resilience, places that won't ebb and flow over periods. And then many of you know, we've, especially here in Sandpoint, have worked on lands with community access. So either gifted lands that people give us in order to make sure that our community can connect with the land around, which is trails. So in doing this work, in doing our conservation work, what is one of the greatest threats to conservation is the fragmentation of land. And it's when land that's further afield gets, that 100 acres gets subdivided into 10-acre parcels out in the valleys and out on agricultural lands that are really important and vital to keep as working lands. So I think each of us could say we feel and have felt in the most recent past that threat. And so we started thinking about, how do we as a land trust play a role in this as well? We as a land trust love to tackle community challenges. And this seemed to be a really in our face, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, community challenge where we have a workforce that is getting priced out of the housing market. And Ben's going to talk a little bit about that later on. But what was happening is that the people that live and work in Sandpoint, or our communities that are close into Sandpoint in Bonner County, were not able to find housing that they could find housing right here. And so they were moving further afield. So that also helps to fragment community. When you're a person that's working here in town, but yet you have to live 30 miles down the road in order to afford a house, and after work, you're not able to stay and participate in the community, be a part of the community, it starts to fracture our community. So we really felt like this is a reason why somebody, that didn't have to be us, but somebody needs to be thinking about housing and housing access, especially for our workforce. So, and there's lanes in which we can think about how we work. And we were thinking particularly about the workforce, which is, and you'll see later on in the slide, it's 80% to 120% AMI. There's the other section of affordable housing, which is 80% and under AMI, which is handled by other community partners in our region. And so really this was this group of people, was the missing middle. This is the work that wasn't getting done. One of the things our board asked us to do as we went out into, as we started thinking about, do we have a role in helping our community solve these problems? As they said, Katie, go out and look regionally, go out and look in our community. Is somebody doing this? Is somebody doing community land trust housing? And as I went out in the region and looked, there were individuals down in Coeur d'Alene that were just starting these same conversations, but they did not have the capacity at that point in order to take on a project of this nature. And we didn't have anybody here locally doing these types of projects. So in response to that, our board said, okay, this is a community challenge. We're feeling the effects of it in conservation, in the fragmentation of our land, in the lands around Sandpoint. We do have a role to play. Let's keep going down this path. Let's keep exploring how we can, as a land trust, an organization that is, well-versed in holding land. Let's see what role we have to play as either as the land trust going and doing this, or finding the right partners. Let's start down this track together. So it became, as you can see, part of our strategic vision and mission that we put into our plan to do this work and go forward in this, the investigation, really, the research, and then the understanding of what this could look like in our community here in Bonner County. And that, that meant expanding relationships, investigating current opportunities, as I talked about. And then also, many of you may have participated in the roundtable that we had back in June of 22 that really went out to talk to our community and say, this is what a community land trust looks like. Should we be doing this work? Is this something that you think would jive within our community? And it was a resounding yes. This is interesting. This is an interesting tool in the toolbox. It's not the only tool to help solve this problem of the missing middle, the workforce, getting people to have home ownership and helping them build stability in their life. It's not the only tool, but it's a good tool. And so we continue to go down this path. I'm really happy to see Michael has joined us. This is Michael Brown, who I mentioned earlier has been working with us from Burlington Associates, has been really a guiding light for our committee, and it's been such a pleasure to have him on the team. So I'm going to now turn it over to Ben to talk about, what was the situation we saw here in Bonner County? Why did this seem to be an issue?
Yeah, thank you, Katie, and thank you for. I'm just so happy to be a part of this initiative. It's been great to research and to help identify solutions here for workforce affordable housing. We know that anecdotally, hearing from our community members that housing is a challenge, and here's some information really that backs it up, right? And we see what is happening across the U.S. and it is exponentially impacting us here in Bonner County due to, as Katie was saying, we have such a resource-rich, beautiful area to be in that. The quality of life is so great. It's drawing and attracting a lot of people here. Obviously, the draw of the lakes, the mountains, it has a lot of tourist attraction to it. And, with that brings people who have money that can afford to buy second, third homes that are driving those prices up, right? And the community that is serving us, whether it's teachers or police officers, restaurant workers, they're being priced out, right? And so we can see that here in this graph, the exponential impacts that we're seeing, those escalations of prices, specifically in Bonner County, over the last couple of years. And obviously, the last 2 to 4 years has really had a significant impact in those costs. So we have data here that really backs up what we're hearing out there in the community about those rising home prices in relationship to the median income. Next slide here shows Bonner County really is unique in comparison to the rest of our kind of surrounding communities, Spokane County and Kootenai County. You can see that their average median income is higher. The home average costs are not as high. But we see here in Bonner County that average home value of almost $800,000, whereas the median household income is hovering right around the mid-50s. And this data was based on in 2021. We have some updated data here that's shown on the right that shows our median income has increased to about $62,000 a year. And if we look at this information, what does it mean for affordability? It really says that somebody who is making an average median income really can afford between a $215,000 home and a $325,000 home. And we all know that out there, if you're looking for these homes, they don't exist. There's very few homes out on the market these days that are priced below $400,000. And so we need to come up with solutions that can kind of help offset those market costs in relationship to the median income. And the community land trust is definitely a way to do that. Next slide. There's been a number of different studies that have been out there of what are these affordable housing solutions. Leland Consulting Group was hired by the city of Sandpoint to go out there and research affordability, ways that you can provide more density, how can you lower some regulatory barriers to make it less costly to build. But one of the things that they highlighted here as a solution is the community land trust model. And really this is partnerships across public and private entities, people who are interested in supporting these initiatives through donations, whether it be monetary, time, or land. And this is a solution that is not necessarily specific to Bonner County, but we'll show later in this presentation that's being used across the nation to help the workforce be able to afford housing, given the continued increase in costs, high interest rates. It's one of the solutions that we have at our disposal here to help our community be successful.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I had a little trouble signing in on Zoom. So the reality is, based upon it, when we go to a bank, qualify for a mortgage, we can qualify for the size of that loan based upon our income. And for people that aren't making enough, they're priced out, and their only options really are either to figure out a way to make more money, which has its challenges, or to double up with family or friends, or to continue renting, which is certainly a viable option, but there's no ability to build equity, or to move. And so if we go back to the previous slide, most programs that are set up to try and help people bridge the gap between what they can afford based upon their income and what the cost of housing is, typically those subsidy resources, whether it's provided by the private sector or the public sector, are structured as a gift to the buyer. either a loan that's forgiven slowly over time or an outright grant. But oftentimes there's no protections put in place to make sure that that home remains affordable. Quick sort of side story, I had a conversation not all that long ago with another mountain resort community like yours, like the one I live in Gallatin County, Montana. They said, you know, they came up with they came up with $2.5 million worth of city funds to provide $250,000 subsidy assistance to bridge the gap for 10 lucky households with 5-year affordability restrictions, which meant that on the first day of year 6, that household could sell that home for whatever the market will bear and pocket all of that subsidy, which is not a particularly effective long-term strategy. So without putting protections in place and providing support and assistance, we're kind of losing ground. Next slide. So what community land trusts do, can move to the next slide, please. What community land trusts do is structure the deal differently. Instead of giving a gift or a loan of money to an individual household, the subsidy resources, wherever they come, are used to write down the purchase price of the home to a level that a limited income household can afford based upon their gross household income. And at closing, the home buyer purchases the home. The title to that home is recorded in their name for all the home and all the improvements. This community-based organization retains the ownership of the land, but leases its use exclusively to that homeowner by means of a 99-year lease agreement that's inheritable and that's renewable for an additional 99-year term. So it conveys to that household an exclusive, durable, enforceable, legally binding right to use and occupy that parcel in which their home is located. And the Community Land Trust Organization, which is governed by a board of directors that's representative of the geographic service area that's served by the CLT, retains the ownership of the land so that in the event that that homeowner ever decides to sell and move on, the community organization on behalf of the community it serves can make sure that that home remains available and affordable to the next buyer. Next slide, please. So again, the subsidy resources are used to write down the purchase price, and this lease agreement, which is a legally binding instrument executed at closing, recorded in the county land records as enforceable as a deed, also stipulates whatever the community determines are appropriate standards regarding use and occupancy. So for example, most community land trusts say, we provided substantial assistance to help you purchase this home you would otherwise not be able to afford. Therefore, it needs to be an owner-occupied home. You can't rent it out as an Airbnb or a VRBO. We can't subsidize that. If you can do that somewhere else, it's certainly your right to do that. But we want to make sure that we're targeting these homes to folks who are otherwise priced out of the market. And we want to make sure this home remains available. And then at resale, the homeowner, every CLT, Community Land Trust Organization, structures its agreement differently, but the expectation is that in the event that a homeowner ever sells, they get to keep the equity that they've earned by like any other homeowner by paying down the principal balance of their mortgage, plus they get a share of the appreciation and the value of the home that takes place during the time that they live there, but not all of the appreciation, because if they're allowed to keep all the appreciation, the home by definition is no longer affordable, and the subsidy that was used, the resource that were used to make the home initially available and affordable are lost. So the homeowner gets to keep the equity they've earned, they get to share the market appreciation. Everything else remains in the home, so the home remains affordable and available to the next buyer from one household to the next over time. Next slide, please.
Oh, so now, and I should have said this at the beginning, you guys, if you have questions during this, we have our 2 awesome summer interns ready to receive questions. You can ask them in the question and answer button, I think that you see. It's hard because I don't see what you see. And we will answer them as we go. We'll also hopefully have, our goal was to leave 30 minutes at the end of this for any questions that you might have too. So just go ahead and type in the chat if you have questions as we're going along. How do you fund the Community Housing Trust project? And this is the difference between, at least currently, the funding really comes from grants that we go that in this case, Kaniksu Land Trust would go after. So grants, donations, the market rate home sales become a funding mechanism, and also those land lease payments, which are we have set for $50 per household. So this is not a project that gets federal funding. There is no, that I have seen, there is no federal funding in this 80% to 120% AMI. There are certain programs through the USDA that the homeowner can use, and Michael can step in if I'm incorrect, but there's certain programs the homeowner can use as a assist for a mortgage. But really, this is all of the funding for housing to date. Housing support on the federal level has gone to that affordable, which is 80% and under. And that's why these projects really need to be community funded projects, and they are community funded projects. So, you know, we have for this work so far in terms of the planning of this have gone after grants, and we've been fortunate, and you'll see some of our partners at the last slide, partners who have been helped us with the planning phase of this, allowing us to do this work, to bring these awesome minds together and figure this out for our own community. And then it's what often what we say, and it depends on projects, but when Ben does the analysis for us on the pro formas, it really is, we need to find about 25 to 35, depending on the project, 25 to 35% of the funding needs to come from donations and grants. So it's a big chunk that we're looking at to help subsidize these homes and make these this type of home possible for our community members. We have some site selection criteria that our committee has come up with that is really important as we go into these projects, that we try to achieve as many of these goals in our projects as we possibly can. And one of the things that I know was living out there was the thought of, are you taking your conservation land and turning it into housing? No, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. You'll see in number 6, city services need to be existing. It does not work to build this type of housing product on land that is not already serviced through water and sewer. That's just, it's economically not viable. The other things that we look for is, you know, as I think many of you know who know Kaniksu Land Trust really well, we thrive, our work thrives in community. We look to our community to help us to be at the table with us. A good example is this community group that has formed looking at this project. And then also to create spaces that bring community together. Thinking about like Pine Street Woods as a great example, the Sled Hill is a great example of how do we bring community together. We're thinking about this exact same thing when we think about the development of a project. And there are things that are core to the beliefs that we have that should exist in projects that we work on. The first one being trail connectivity is an ideal. So can you from your house easily go out the front door and find a connection to a trail that will connect you to special places? That is always a goal. We feel like a walkable community creates a high quality lifestyle, obviously less car usage, and healthier communities as a whole. We also look at, is there the potential for site restoration? Is this a site that has been, been misused over the years? And is there a way to restore a creek or restore noxious, patches of noxious weeds? So we really think about, is there a way to create a better environment for the community as a whole through these projects? Again, strengthen our city center. Is it easy to get into the city? Is it easy to walk and get groceries? These are things we think about when we look at potential sites. Connecting the residents of these communities to existing green space and open space. Really, when we look at designing these projects, when we can, we look to make sure that there is open space very close by. And if we have the opportunity in future developments, we would also put green space into these projects. So think about things like open fields, community gardens, play spaces for kids. This is an example of a project that we, up here on the slide is an example of a project that we were looking at. And as you can see, Yes, there's housing here, but there's a lot of green space as well, incorporated into this project. Making sure that people are on multiple transportation corridors. It's easy to grab a bus into town. It's easy to get your car onto major transportation corridors. That is also important to us. And as I said, city services need to be existing. You need to have the sewer and the water services right there on the site. We also think about the 3 tenants being housing dignity, community, and open space. So, you know, Michael's going to tell us a really good show us a good example of a project at Bridge Review in Bozeman, Montana. And they, in order to support the subsidies on that project, they had 50% of the homes were community land trust homes, 50% of the homes were on the regular market. But if you were to go there today and look at the houses inside and outside, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the CLT house and the house that was sold on the regular market. So we really want to focus on just that housing dignity, having a nicely built house that people and families are proud to be a part of the community and proud to have this home. We also look at developing community within the typology of the project. So thinking about street designs that are more pedestrian and cyclist friendly, thinking about things down to co-locating where the garbage is picked up. And so that people come out of their houses and see each other when they take the garbage out or they go and collect the mail, thinking about how can we through these projects encourage interaction amongst members of the community, and thinking about the potential for some of these projects could be multi-generational spaces. Then again, going back to that open space, which is really important to us, really that it enhances all of those things that you see below that, in terms of both the quality of life for the individual, but also the benefits for the land. Michael's going to share a few projects out there that you could, we're going to try to figure out a way to put them in the question and answer, some of the links so that you can look at some of the community land trust projects all around the country, and some that are really like more focused on places like Sandpoint. And I think Michael will tell some stats on how many community land trusts there are out there operating.
Sure. There are nearly 400 community land trusts operating in all but 2 or 3 states across the United States. And all of them share the same goal, which is to try and address 2 equally important but directly competing goals. On the one hand, to provide a fair opportunity and an opportunity to build equity to an initial household, the first homebuyer household, at the same time that they can use the subsidy resources that made that home initially affordable, that can benefit a subsequent occupant and so on down as the home transfers from time to time. So I wanted to give you just kind of a quick tour of kind of the region, if you will, just to show you some examples of community land trusts. As Katie mentioned, this is here in Bozeman, Montana, where at the top of the slide is the Story Mill Community Park, which developed by the Trust for Public Lands and deeded to the city. It's truly a monumental park, but 8 acres. This was a former mobile home park site through the park in this little area here. We built a 62-home new neighborhood, and very deliberately built a neighborhood and not a subdivision, where we paid a lot of attention to the location of the homes, the sight lines, and all the rest of that. As Katie mentioned, there are 62 owner-occupied homes. Half of them are sold at market rate prices. The other half are below market, and each of the homes, in terms of their quality and finish, are identical. They're highly energy efficient. And the intent here really was to do 2 things. One is to create a healthy neighborhood, because neighborhoods used to be mixed income. And the second thing was to create some vitally needed below market housing for households that were earning too much to qualify for any available federal or state housing affordability assistance, but couldn't afford to live in this community. We've got households that are commuting from 75 miles away to come in and work our businesses. The hospital nursing staff is working at 40% capacity. So this isn't just a social justice issue. This is a quality of life issue for the people who teach our kids and who care for our streets and our shops and all the rest of that. Next slide. So this is our site plan. We squeezed 62 homes very deliberately, trying to build smaller homes. These are not tiny homes, but smaller homes on smaller lots because we pay for construction and land by the square foot. Next slide. There's more that could be said about this. So just an example of other places where this is happening. This is in a community land trust that's headquartered in Deadwood, South Dakota. They serve kind of the western third of the state. A lot of their activity is in the Black Hills of South Dakota, again, where they're doing both new construction and acquisition rehab of homes that are priced with subsidy resources to make them affordable for households who are vital to their workforce. Next slide. Bringing it into Idaho, the Arch, which is a community housing organization down in Ketchum, is creating a stock of permanently affordable homes. Again, they too are building new neighborhoods as well as infill homes as they become available either for acquisition, rehab, or new construction. Next. LEAP, which is you'll hear a bit about as we wrap up here as a partner of what's happening with this community land trust effort up in your communities. LEAP is has created and is selling a stock of permanently affordable resale restricted homes on leased land. And the final example, is there one more? Nope, that's it. So if you're interested, we can get you more information about community land trusts that are operating across the United States.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So yes, so we know that here at Kaniksu Land Trust that we can't do work without supporting partners, and having partners involved, and partnerships really make the world go around for us. And so we are grateful for all of the partners that you see on this screen. We have partners that have provided grant funding to us for the work to date. Then we also have partners that have provided intellectual capital and understanding. And we appreciate the work that is done at Bonner Community Housing Agency here in town. As I said, at this point, they've worked mainly in the affordable realm, but they have been awesome partners in helping us to really figure out housing here. And I think going forward are going to be great partners as well. And then Leap Housing also has really stepped up. We have been able to utilize the work that they have done and the knowledge that they have gained from their work down in Boise. And they have been and will continue to be great partners in this work going forward. And so you'll probably hear much more about Leap in our work up here in Bonner County far into the future. So with that, and there we go. I should have had that loaded there. This is pretty much what I said. We love partnerships and we're grateful for them. So that's it I'm going to stop the share. That's it for our presentation today. Hopefully to date, we don't have any, unless I'm reading this incorrectly, I don't think we have any questions at this point. But we'll give you guys a few minutes if you want to ask some questions. Hopefully you're able to put those questions here in the chat, and we are happy to answer any questions you might have. In terms of projects, we are constantly looking for potential land for these projects. And so if you know anybody who might be interested in providing the land for the projects, let us know. So somebody asked, what are the grant deliverables on the grants that we have received? So what we asked for was support in providing us support on creating the governance structure around what a community land trust looks like. So when you have a community land trust, obviously, if you're going to develop it, and the intention we had as KLT is that we would be the catalyst to help support this, and then it could go one of two ways. We could find the right partner to partner with, or we would form a separate entity that really would become the community land trust for our region. And so our grant deliverables, one of the things that we wanted to be able to do was write bylaws for the organization. we needed to create the ground lease for the organization. So the ground lease is, Michael can go deeper into it, but it's a lengthy document that really identifies all of those guiding principles for what a family who enters into that ground lease with us, all of the sort of the rights and responsibilities of us as an organization and them as a homeowner. So it created the ground lease, and then we have a home selection process that it helped. It gave us the money, and really this is the money to have Michael help us, guide us through this process, and Ben to help us work on project management, and really to support the committee work. Is there anything else about the ground lease, Michael, that I should touch on?
Well, what I'd like to speak to, and this might be part of the question about the grant deliverables. The only way we're going to create housing affordability is if we create it. The marketplace just can't do that. That's not an indictment of the marketplace. It's just, in your community, in Gallatin County, houses are just incredibly expensive. So it takes the investment of resources. So just hypothetically, if you did 20 homes, and I'm not suggesting this is an example for your community, so just hypothetically, based on what I've seen, I've been doing this work for 45 years now. If you put $250,000 of a subsidy into 20 homes, that's $5 million. $250,000 per home, that's a lot of money. One of the additional payoffs, though, is because we keep these homes affordable from one homeowner to the next. I'm going to pause here and say that we've done analysis for the community land trusts that have been existing and operating across the country over the last number of decades. And what we found is about 70%, just a little over 70% of community land trust homeowners, when they sell their homes, are able to leverage the security and stability of this home that they would otherwise have not been able to afford, and the equity that they build, this limited appreciation that they're able to build, and they have enough stability, and they have enough money to go out and buy a conventional home in the market. So we're helping transition people who are locked out of home ownership, helping them into home ownership, helping them transition out with the likelihood they're going to be able to buy a home somewhere that they would not have been able to do if they'd been renting. And then we've kept the home affordable so we can start all over again. So go back to my $5 million example for 20 houses. The other thing we've seen is that CLT community land trust homes sell on average every 7 years. These are 99-year inheritable renewable lease agreements, but like Fannie and Freddie tell us, homes sell on average across the country every 7 years. So if we average that out at 10 years, then over a 10-year period of time, if each of those 20 homes sold every 10 years, over the useful life of those homes at 100 years, we'd serve 200 households with that $5 million. And that's a subsidy equivalent to $25,000 per home. So what we're doing is protecting and leveraging the investment of those resources. I'm going to jump to another question here, if I may, real quickly.
Yeah.
There was a question about how does a community land trust work in a mixed income development. I didn't explain that adequately. So in going back to Bridger View, 62 homes, 31 are market rate, and we're selling those homes conventionally on the market. So the homeowner buys the home and they own the land. Those are not resale restricted. They're not lease restricted. The below market homes, to protect the investment of the resources that we put in to write down the purchase price by roughly half of their market value, those are sold at the below market prices, and they are sold, they're homes that are sold on this ground lease arrangement.
Let's see. So you sort of answered, Michael, that for the second question too. What percentage of the market appreciation would a prospective home buyer recoup upon sale of a home? And that we have set that at 2.5% per year is the equity built up in the house for the homeowner. And then, yes, so the next question, must homeowners who work with a CLT pay both monthly mortgage rates to a bank and monthly lease payments to the trust? And the answer to that is yes, but those lease payments to the trust are a pretty minimal payment of, between, depending on the project, between $30 and $50 a month. for the lease of the land.
And then like any other homeowner, we've reduced the purchase price to a level that the household at say 100% of median income could afford. They couldn't afford to go out on their own and buy a home, but they can afford to buy it at this price. They're getting a conventional loan from a bank. And they're paying on that mortgage like any other home buyer, but they're paying at a rate that they can afford.
Exactly. Has Habitat been involved in any of this? So Habitat we have had conversations with Habitat. Habitat has not been involved in our projects to date, but there is, I know from Michael, sort of a national movement with Habitat to start thinking about community land trusts. Is that correct, Michael?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yes, as Michael explained, this housing is deed restricted. So it's the deed restriction that is needed in order to preserve the affordability of the house over time so that, you know, as we're creating housing for that 80 to 120% AMI group, that group is always able to, through time, have housing that is affordable. Again, it was the example of if you don't have this deed restriction and then in 6 years you go and sell the house, then that's a winner for the person who has the house, but it's a loss because your community no longer has housing that is affordable to that 80 to 120% average median income earner. And then the next question, you described what a good site for the CLT project might look like. Does KLT have any sites in mind at the moment? And the answer is yes. So we do. We've been looking, really since we started this project, we've been looking and scouring the land, the landscape for the right project, the right location, again, hitting on all of those things and that one site selection criteria that we were looking for. And we have a number of sites and they all look different in terms of, the number of houses that can be built on them. One site is 6 houses, another site is 50 houses. But then, as I talked about in the funding model, then you also have to look at what can we pull in terms of grants and donations in order to make a project like this work. So it's all of this sort of working in tandem together to figure out that next project. Okay, Michael, this is a great one to answer. How can they sell and afford to buy a new house when they only get a certain percentage of equity? And I think one of the things that I always thought was interesting that we talked about was the percentage of people that move out of community land trust houses into the fair market.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, what we see across community land trusts across the United States, and this is not a guarantee for Bonner County, Gallatin County, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for that matter. But on average, not on average, statistically, just over 70% of CLT homeowners are able to build enough equity to buy a conventional home. And that's certainly a lot, their chances are a whole lot better than if they had been renting. And if it sounds like I'm criticizing renting, I'm not, but the reality is renting is a viable housing option, but there's no equity that's built in. So, and I don't have the spreadsheet up in front of me, but I'll use an example. So, a 2-bedroom townhome at Bridger View. Market rate was $610, which is an insane number, but that's what the market is. And we were able to raise enough subsidy to write down the purchase price of that $610 by half. So we sold them for $305,000. Our resale formula with Headwaters Community Housing Trust, which is the community land trust here in in Gallatin County, allows the homeowner 2.5% annually, and that number compounds. So just give you a sense, so when they go to sell, they can sell it for the $305,000 they paid for it. And that resale formula at 2.5% compounded allows them 10 years from now, $87,000 of appreciation, plus whatever equity they built by paying down the principal balance of their mortgage. And I don't have that number in front of me, but that's probably $30,000, something like $40,000, something like that. So so not hypothetically, but actually 10 years from now, that homeowner would have somewhere in the range of $100,000 to $120,000 worth of appreciation, which we think here in Bozeman, Gallatin County, is a good deal. They have the opportunity to purchase and own a home and all that stability that comes with it, and the ability to build $120,000 worth of equity over 10 years, which should be enough to be able to allow them to make a down payment on a house in this market or anything but a stupidly more expensive market somewhere else. And the beauty of this is that the rest of it stays with the home. So the resale price to the next buyer without having to raise any additional resources is that original 305 plus the $87,000 that's allowed through the resale formula. So this home that had a market value in 2023 of 610 can sell in 2033 for $392,000, which is still substantially below. That's the trade-off that we're constantly trying to do, is create a fair and equitable return for the seller and a fair and affordable price to the buyer.
Great.
I think I've answered both of those two questions there.
I think you did a great job. Awesome. Yeah, we have a great example, and sometime we'll have to, we'll post it. We had a great example of a local here who came and listened to one of our presentations, and then and shared with us that his son's friend who grew up in Montana, went to college in Montana, was able to get one of the homes at Bridgerview, and knew that, like, he never thought it would be possible. He came out of college, got a engineering job. He never thought it would be possible for him to be able to afford a home in that market. And so he's a great example of how this can work for you and for your community.
Let me try and answer these next two questions. These are great questions. I'm really glad they're coming in. What happens when the market crashes and somebody, what's the impact upon our homeowner? And we know about this because community land trusts have been in existence in other communities for a long time. So there were, for example, community land trusts established in South Florida that I worked with 25 years ago. And then the recession hit. And so it went from being a really hot market to one of the cradles of the Great Depression, of slumping housing values. But what we found is that while the market value of the CLT home is depreciating at the same rate as their next door neighbor who owns it outright, it takes them a lot longer to be underwater. So I'll go back to my Bridgerview example. The house is a value at the time of purchase of 610. They bought it for 305. If a recession hit, if the market started crashing, the value would go down, but it would take a long, long time for that to be anywhere close to the original 305 that they paid, and what they would get through their resale formula. So, in an absolute cataclysmic worst case scenario, like any other homeowner, they would face foreclosure, but it's just going to take them a lot longer to be underwater on their mortgage than it is for somebody who paid full market value, or even anything close to approximating full market value. And no, there would be no repossession by the CLT. I hope I'm adequately answering your questions.
These are great questions. They're all ones I can say that we've asked and gone over in our advisory committee meetings too. Awesome. You're welcome.
So this is not shameless self-promotion, but if you're interested in learning more about community land trusts, I'm a part of a little consulting group this is what we do as community land trusts. It's called Burlington Associates in Community Development. burlingtonassociates.com is our website. And we've just uploaded a lot of materials up on our website regarding community land trusts in general. The real experts about the community land trusts in Bonner County are the other two folks who are participating on this, and their colleagues that have been putting this together.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And just as I said at the beginning, that website was such a resource rich of information for me as we began exploring this. And so, yeah, I would encourage you to go. They have some great great bits of information where you can learn more. So are there any other questions living out there in the group? If not, I will let you all get back 5 minutes of your day. Okay, thanks so much for being with us and listening to the conversation. And we look forward to keeping you abreast of projects that may come to be. Thanks. Thank you. Have a great day. Great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Katie. Can you stay on, Katie?